Anxiety and depression.
Mm.
Overwhelm, painful, and real. Hi, my name is Janell, and I'm sitting down with my really good friend, Melissa Cunningham. Thank you, Melissa, for joining me. This is our homes to yours, wherever you're getting to join us. This is a conversation, just a look at depression and anxiety, not as doctors, not as therapists. So if you have, this is not meant to be given advice. We're not giving advice to you. And so if you are needing advice, please tap into your healthcare provider, your therapist, and get your support. This conversation is designed to just bring ideas to support you and maybe give you some questions to bring to your healthcare provider, but mainly to support you. So join our conversation. If you want to grab your tea or your glass of water, please do, and sit down with Melissa and I as we just open this conversation together. Melissa, we go back a long ways. We've been friends for what, 9 years now? Friends and colleagues. Yay for me. I've been blessed to know you.
Our lives are better because of you.
So, I would like the audience just to hear a little bit about your background, who are you, what you've studied, and that brings you up to date today.
Okay. I was a research scientist, lab assistant for years, and loved that. And then my husband and I had children, and I decided to be a stay-at-home mom. And along the way, we realized that our eldest had some learning differences and was probably on the spectrum. So stay-at-home mom turned into homeschool mom, turned into running a farm to have our kids out in nature because we thought that was good for them. And then moved to the big city for more services for kiddo. And now with Janell, we run a nonprofit for kiddos with learning differences. And that's where my passion is.
Yes, and you are a learning coach there and also head the listening therapy program that Sunburst Academy offers.
Yes.
Yay, Melissa. And in our work and in the neurodiverse community that we get the honor of serving, we see depression and anxiety, don't we?
Yes, especially in the non-neurotypicals, it's a common comorbidity. And especially it feels like with our ADHDers, that's where we see the most of it. It's like the anxiety and depression are flip sides of a coin that they carry in their pocket.
Ooh, good way to say that. Yeah. And you personally have walked this journey.
So there isn't a single neurotypical family member in my household. I guess we're not boring. Excuse me. My youngest has ADHD, and with that beautiful brain comes the propensity for anxiety and depression. And he had some anxiety challenges as a youngster, starting in like third or fourth grade. We realized this wasn't normal social anxiety. This wasn't typical. I guess I shouldn't say normal. It wasn't typical. It was affecting the way he lived. So we started seeing a naturopath about that. And we got some supplements based on some genetic testing we did, which I highly recommend if people can do it. There's genetic testing that can be done to look at methylation pathway defects, and based on those, they can fine-tune supplements and such. Anyway, then during COVID, which I know a lot of other people, friends experienced as well with their families, during COVID is when the depression really hit.
Okay.
And even though in theory COVID's gone or lifted, or I don't know what to call it, just with us, we're used to it now. I don't know. And life's kind of returning to normal, a new normal. The depression didn't just like snap out of it, right? So we had to dig a little deeper to help him find his way.
Yeah. And what were some of the signs, like before you really knew what was going on? What are some signs that you've observed that, hey, these heads up?
So getting him out of bed in the morning became almost impossible. He just didn't have the energy. So he's much lower energy. And if you've ever worked with an ADHD kiddo or have an ADHD kiddo, low energy is not their MO. So he had really low energy. He didn't want to do things. We have a pool table. He didn't want to play pool. That he just had a really hard time getting out of bed and getting going. He still did his schoolwork. He still did his chores around the house, but the sparkle was not in his eyes.
Yeah.
So low energy, not wanting to go out in public. I mean, even during quarantine, there was no public, right? But not wanting to go outside much, just wanting to be in his room alone, sleeping a lot, or not necessarily sleeping, but resting, because he didn't sleep well. That was another sign. Very poor sleep quality.
Okay.
So we got him an Aura ring, so one of those biometric rings, and we have his sleep measured per the advice of his counselor, so we can keep track of his sleep, which includes quality of sleep. And that gives us really good information about when we do something new, is it helping or not?
Nice. And that genetic test, that's interesting because, we are so individual. And if we can really look at ourselves from the inside first, right? And inside out, and say, wow, what will work for us? Because if I remember right, so correct me if I'm wrong, when we've talked about that test, it took out so much guesswork for what kind of, like you said, herbal support and or medications that would support your son the best.
Yes. So the genetic report testing doesn't say absolutely do this, it's going to work for you 100%. But what it does say is these medications are much more likely to have negative side effects that are profound. And these medications are much less likely to have those profound side effects. And then cross that with these medications are more likely to work, and these medications are less likely to work based on methylation pathway defects. So it was super useful. In deciding what types of medications to try with him. And we tried a couple of antidepressants. We tried another medication that's off label for for depression. And something that we had to do was just listen to him.
Okay.
Really hear him. And our counselor had us, and we still do, it's a habit now, check in with him at least once a day. How are you feeling? Just think of a time today when you felt something. What emotion was that? So we're helping him name his emotions, because when you can name your emotions, your brain can deal with them better.
Nice. Yeah. And one thing we've learned in working with our gifted, non-neurotypical individuals is they are highly empathic.
Typically, yes.
Typically, there's never an always, but just typically we've seen this. And in supporting some of our young people, we realize that they are feeling so much. And once they feel it, they take it on as theirs. And in your experience, has that been a trigger? Do you think that's a trigger, a player? I know it's just not never one thing. There's lots of things, but do you feel that's a player?
I'm sure it is. Most people have some empathy, right? And especially the non-neurotypicals seem to absorb the empathy or the emotions around them. So yes, with my particular kiddo, it was less of an issue than some other kiddos. But part of that is because some of the therapies that we've done with him in the past that have helped, like some of this work we've done with you, have helped give him space between his emotions and the outside world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That helps. There's already an understanding there, isn't there? Because Go ahead. I was just thinking about the young person we were supporting the other day and how, as they were growing up and navigating their world through the lens they were looking at, they were picking up other people's feelings about them, at least their perspective, their view on how that felt to them, and it stayed with them, it stayed with their body, and how important it was to help guide them to take that out, like just to be aware. We're not aware of what we don't know, but once that we're aware, we can take that out and in a sense heal that, give tools, separate from that, and just navigate with the gift, but not have to stay in that overwhelming space.
And it's great how you can guide people to recognize what emotions are actually theirs versus what emotions they've absorbed and taken on.
Mm-hmm.
So that is extremely helpful.
Extremely helpful. But it's not just so simple. So nutrition's a part of it. Now, in your experience, because I'm going to back up, I was doing an interview with a doctor this fall, and they were talking about how influential the dopamine creation in our digestion, and serotonin balance, how influential that is in anxiety and depression. Because if one is higher than the other, depending on which way it goes, it is impossible for an individual to get out of bed. And I think it's tempting until we understand. This did not come from you, but from others. I've just said, well, just get your act together. You're just, come on, you're lazy. You're at all these labels, and judgment can come. And it's like, wait a second. And you said something so valuable. It's like, wait, you were listening to your child. How important it is to listen and hear and go, okay, now we got to become the detective.
Right. Yes, that's what it was. And I think that my biochemistry, I'm fortunate. My biochemistry tends to not lean toward depressed. It's just the way my brain works. I'm just lucky that my brain biochemistry is built that way. And so, but I've always, when my mom passed away, of course I was depressed, but it was a depression that lasted for a while, but I was able to come out of it on my own. But that's because I have that natural biochemistry that isn't typically depressed.
Right.
So I think something I had to learn was that there's no snap out of it for people who have a biochemistry that leans toward depression.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's okay to get medical help, just like you would get medical help if we have diabetes. You get medical help if you have heart disease. So when our brain biochemistry is off, just like when our body biochemistry is off, we need help. And
Yeah.
that's okay.
And that's okay. And are food allergies also part of this journey?
Yes. So this same kiddo has a pretty severe soy allergy, which took us 3 years to figure out, I believe. So many tests and sleepless nights for mom and him because he was in pain with it. And it was also affecting his moods. Now, it's impossible to tease apart whether or not he was becoming more depressed because he was feeling awful all the time, or he was more depressed because his gut was so messed up. We don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
I suspect some of it was from the gut being messed up and his immune system firing up for his soy allergy. So after finally discovering that via elimination diet, so that was the only thing that worked. We did tons of testing, and he's not anaphylactically allergic to it, so it doesn't show up on those kind of tests. But we did an elimination diet, and the first time he tried soy coming off the elimination diet, he was violently ill.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like we had to leave a Marvel movie, big deal, in the middle of the movie. And then my husband and other son had to take an Uber home because I had to get my kiddo home where he was so sick. So that was telling. And now he can have a little tiny bit of soy here and there, but I really feel like it affects his moods.
Okay.
Convincing a teenager to stay on a specific diet is nearly impossible, though. So we just do what we can.
Yeah. So top challenging things. What's some of the top 3 challenging parts of this journey thus far?
You mean, so the top challenging things. So when you hear your kiddo come to you, or when you realize that your kiddo has a mental health issue, that's a hard one as a parent, because it's not something you can just go to the doctor and solve immediately. It's not strep where you go get an antibiotic and it's all better. It's not, it's something that takes a lot of work in a team. So we have a great naturopath, we have a GP, and we have a counselor we work with. And it takes all of us working together. It has taken all of us working together. So that's the other thing. Don't try to do it on your own. Get the help. I know there are wait lists for therapists. And that can be challenging, but a lot of times you can find someone who can get you in, maybe without insurance, if that's possible. Or talk to your GP. And usually they have nice lists for you. Talk to other parents, go on Facebook and find Facebook. There's tons of Facebook groups for Asperger's groups. There's autism groups. There's ADHD parent groups. All of those exist, and find one local to your area. And those are great places to say, whom did you get help from? Because the odds are, I don't know, 30% of those kiddos are probably needed that kind of help, maybe higher.
Probably, yeah. Based on what we see, absolutely. So you already you touched on that, but advice, you're giving advice now. Is there anything else that you are thinking of that would be advice for those that are on this journey also?
I think the two most important things, well, three most important things we changed about our kiddo's life just to get him started on a wellness journey was to make sure he ate vegetables at every meal. And I know that sounds like a no-brainer, and it is, but as a teenager, he's been getting his own lunch for a while, and there were no vegetables or fruit in that lunch. So getting lots of different colors of vegetables into his body. And so I just have to make sure that I find out what his favorites are, and I keep those sliced and ready to go, because if there's any work involved, 15-year-old's probably not going to make the effort to chop vegetables. So vegetables, getting more colors in their diet. The second thing was getting him outside for a minimum of 20 minutes a day, even if you're literally just sitting there. But we have 2 dogs, so there's ample opportunity for him to go outside. And he used to love going outside, but during his worst depression state, he didn't want to go outside at all. So we had to go outside with him and set cause and effect, set parameters around that. If he didn't go outside, he didn't get screens. So that was the deal. And then lastly, sleep. Sleep was a big one. He was sleeping maybe 5 hours a night, even though he was in bed all the time. So our therapist helped us a lot with figuring out our sleep routine and getting the Aura ring or using an Apple Watch, or there's a variety of options out there to actually get sleep data and exercise data for your kiddos. So
beautiful. Thank you, Melissa. And thank you for just loving people above and beyond. That is one of your superpowers. Thank you for being here and just sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.